Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice.
Thank you so much, Michael. And as you can see here, we are going to have a really great podcast. We've got a funny front coming in with low pressure to actually be funny if you don't feel like you have anything.
Great. The basic conceit of our show is that we have a fan or expert on a topic, and then we sort the things within that knowledge base into the various houses of Hogwarts. Today, we are joined by Tom Schuler. Tom has existed for, you claim to be a not quite expert anymore.
A former expert, sure. I think would be appropriate.
But you worked in the Air Force as their meteorologist, or you were an
One
Air
of
Force
many.
Meteorologist. Yeah, not
Yes.
the.
Michael,
but
I love that you started that sentence, and I was like, where is this going with, he claims to have existed. I was like, we're getting real existential at the top of this pod.
Yeah. But yeah, you were in the Air Force. You were there, one of the meteorologists there. You did that for 6 years, so you've got a pretty substantial knowledge base. At least you have 6 years on us for sure. And then you also were a part of Backline in Omaha.
That's right.
So he's one of our funny friends, guys.
Hi, Nebraska comedians.
And so we're going to be sorting significant meteorological events.
That's right. Yeah, I wanted to use the term fairly loosely, since we're not exactly being very strict on what to consider a meteorological event.
Sure, and we'll get more like into the weeds with that specifically. It's worth noting, as far as sorting biases are concerned, I am a Ravenclaw. Tom is also a Ravenclaw, and Reed is a Hufflepuff.
All right, I got a nerd outnumbering. Let's do this, boys.
But I mean, before we dive into the list specifically, when you joined the Air Force, what led you, Tom, specifically towards weather patterns and the like?
Actually, it was the other way around. So it was, I wanted to study meteorology.
Oh.
And I found out that the Air Force has a pretty significant meteorological program that nobody even knew about. So it's not secret. But I went to a recruiter and I said, I'm interested in the weather career field. And he said, the what?
He didn't even know. And then you Google it. He was like, "Oh damn, we do have a lot of jobs."
Yeah. There's hundreds of meteorologists in the Air Force, and nobody even knows they exist. And then the people that do know they exist don't even really know what they do.
So what do they do?
There are a number of different fields you can be in the Air Force. The most public of which that I took part in, I was in broadcasting for a little while. That was I'll go in reverse chronological order here.
Okay.
So the last thing I did was broadcasting for the American Forces Network. So we put in our little graphics and sent them all around the world and saying, it's raining in Bermuda Azores today or whatever. Before that.
So you're a disembodied voice in someone's life, like Siri is to me.
Yeah, essentially.
Wow.
Except I was a little less responsive.
A little less responsive, and also responsible for more people, because you were responsible for weather patterns across the globe, as opposed, or maybe you were regional as far as like what you.
Well, we break it into regions, but
wait, Michael, you think Siri is obscure?
No. I mean, just in the sense, like, rather than just being like your interaction with Siri is a personal one, but like you're now dealing with everybody as far as information that you're distilling.
Well, I was still in the cloud, though.
There we go.
Stupid. I'm so excited for all of this. Because, the Air Force probably needs to know pretty much anything that's happening in the sky, especially weather that could keep their planes from being able to go up into there.
Absolutely. And that's the primary mission for most of the Air Force meteorology program. It's weather forecasting to protect people and assets. So to make sure that, hey, if it's going to hail, we need to hangar this very expensive jet.
Right.
Or, hey, if there's going to be lightning, maybe don't be outside holding up a flag. And a lot of that seems like common sense, but sometimes you have to tell a pilot, maybe don't fly through a thunderstorm, and they will argue with you.
Because it would look really cool.
It would, and that is the primary motivation of any pilot.
Is to look cool. That's why they have those aviator sunglasses.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's just dig into these events.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you provided us with a wonderful list. And I suppose we'll start at the top of yours, which was the storm of 1993.
That's right. So
Storm of the century.
Yes, and rightfully known as such. So the storm of the century, the great blizzard of 1993. It is one of many storms to have been called the White Hurricane. I think it's the coolest to be called that.
It sounds like a wrestler name.
Yeah, well, there was the hurricane. We can talk about that. Yeah, Shane Helms. Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through. He was just at the Royal Rumble.
Oh, was
you
he?
gotta keep track. Yeah, he was a surprise entrant.
I stopped watching in like 2009. I don't remember. Like,
I stepped away for a little bit around that time too.
Yeah.
Then I came back.
Gotcha.
Because
it's a good time. Like, people are into wrestling again now.
It's a whole thing again. But yeah, it was Bailey brought me back. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but this is way off on a tangent.
No, you're allowed though.
That's where we go.
Yeah, no, I started watching again because somebody said, "Oh, there's this amazing match between Bailey and Sasha Banks," and I thought, okay, well, from what I remember watching through the Attitude Era or the early 2000s, the women's matches were not something to be proud of.
No, yeah, it was usually like just an excuse to have women in like a bra come out.
It was a just shy of like mud wrestling or jello wrestling situation.
It was literally mud wrestling at times.
Oh, see, my knowledge base on wrestling is
wrestling
virtually
even just
non-existent.
10 years ago was 1,000% more vaudeville.
Yeah. It was absolutely terrible. But I heard good things about this match, and I was like, okay, well, I haven't watched in a while. I'll tune in and see what's going on. And I watched this match, and I kid you not, this is embarrassing. I watched this match and I shed tears watching this match.
Because it was just like really great.
It was amazing.
Like sportsmanship and stuff.
And the way the crowd responded to it is a way I had never heard the crowd respond to a women's match.
Wow.
And I was just like, this is so different. This is so much better than it has ever been before. And now I have two little girls myself.
And one day they can grow up to be divas. Do they still call them divas?
No, they scrapped that a couple years back.
That's amazing.
They still, the reality show is still called Total Divas.
It's okay.
But that's for branding. But yeah, they got rid of the Divas Championship. They don't call them Divas anymore. They have just the Women's Championship. The big step that I thought was really cool. So they had the Money in the Bank match, right?
Yeah.
You get a briefcase, you get a championship shot. And then they made a women's Money in the Bank match too. And at first, the winner, they were like, I'm the 2017 Women's Money in the Bank winner, Carmella. And that was fine. But what really made it something was the men's winner. They announced him. The first time he came out, they were like, the 2017 Money in the Bank winner, Baron Corbin. And then they changed it and they started announcing him as the men's Money in the Bank winner.
Oh, just like making that distinction.
And and then they did the same thing with the Royal Rumble too, the men's Royal Rumble winner. So it wasn't just the regular Royal Rumble and the women's Royal Rumble. It was like, okay, it's, men's and women's.
Oh,
and so it's good that there's a lot of work to be done, but
for an organization that put Donald Trump in the Hall of Fame, which helped put him in the White House, yes.
yeah. But the fact that it's not men is the default anymore is a big step forward. So anyway, the storm of 93.
Tom's taking my job from me. I didn't even need to bring it back.
Talking to me is like talking to anyone's grandma. At some point, you're like, what are we even talking about? So go ahead, so what happened in the storm of 93? Because I don't remember any of this.
Well, it was a blizzard, so as a Californian, I have like no reference at all.
Like a McDonald's drink? What is this?
So the amazing thing is it wasn't just a blizzard. This storm basically had everything you can think of. Mm-hmm. There were tornadoes spawned from this storm. There was flooding in area. There were winds over 100 miles per hour. In Florida, they had a storm surge of over 12 feet, which you don't see with most actual hurricanes. So this was an incredibly strong storm. To spawn tornadoes in early March is very impressive for the dynamics in play. And it brought not only tornadoes, it brought snow to central Florida.
Whoa.
And in some places in the Northeast, there was 4 feet of snow. In mountain areas up there were 5 feet of snow.
Oh, wow.
And one really amazing thing about this was it was a big step forward in forecasting. Because with the advent of being able to use computer models, being able to actually forecast all this and warn people what's going on, this was the first major event that was forecasted and warned ahead of time and very accurate. And a lot of people like to jab at meteorology, like, oh, they're wrong 70% of the time, and I will fight you on that.
Yeah, because once computer technology like came into play, like the advancements just sped up exponentially, right?
Absolutely.
Because they were able to then predict, they were able to warn people before like the snow even started falling in some places, right? I had read like a little bit about this.
2 days before the snow even began to fall, they were
bonkers.
able to issue the blizzard warnings, which now that might not seem as impressive.
Yeah.
But 25 years ago, that wasn't a thing that had happened at that point.
Yeah, I was just starting to actually think about the fact that now we have sometimes we have 10-day weather forecast, which to me seems like absurdly out there. But
it still kind of is.
It still kind of is, sure. But when did 10-day forecast, I always just remembered growing up it being a 3-day forecast out
Back
or
in
something
my
like
day,
that.
you barely got to know the weather.
Well,
These kids today, they can get 10 days ahead of schedule. I don't think so. Michael, you need to stop being bitter. This is a generational thing.
No, you're right. You're right. I need to be the bigger person here and just embrace the technologies that have allowed an entire profession to really get on top of Mother Nature. Really get on top and straddle her.
All right.
And
Okay.
make sure
All right.
that what?
Okay.
Am I out of line now? Is that what happened?
I think you'll find.
Michael wants to fuck the earth, essentially. Just put his wiener right in there.
Look, I'm very lonely.
So I was reading. Okay, so just to help give folks a scope of what this was like, am I correct that it went from Canada all the way down to Honduras in the Gulf of Mexico, right?
Yeah, yes, it was a humongous storm. It stretched the entire East Coast. At some point during this storm, every single airport along the East Coast experienced a closure.
Whoa.
And that's all the way up to, I want to say it was up to, Halifax. Yep, all the way up to Halifax, Nova Scotia. There were airport closures.
That's amazing.
So it was a huge storm, incredibly strong, and well forecasted.
So there still was a lot of damage and stuff, but it was it could have been so much worse though, right?
Yeah, there was more than $2 billion in damage. So,
and is that $2 billion in 90s money damage?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so inflation
multiply
is
that
a little
by
bit more, yeah.
a couple more billion.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
I mean,
we're not inflation experts.
It's definitely a substantial amount in all cases, but I mean, and especially when you take that spread across such a wide area, perhaps, and obviously some areas were hit far harder, probably at the right around the middle section, not where So it was like a blizzard that combined with all these different weather patterns.
It was such a strong cyclone, such a strong blizzard that we saw many of the effects that we don't normally see until the summer storm season, until we have that warmer air around.
Okay.
So it was this incredible mix, this perfect storm sort of mix that created an incredibly strong snowstorm.
Do meteorologists know exactly what caused that warm air?
God's wrath.
Because you're saying
that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was 1993, so Democrats had just taken the White House and God was mad.
Yep.
That was a major part of it, and that's how they were able to forecast
Gay people had started talking out loud.
Yeah, and
in public?
we just can't have that. And so, I mean, that's why we had tornadoes in Florida in March. So
Like 11 in one day, right?
there were yes.
I
11.
looked at Wikipedia. I don't just know a lot about the storm of the century of 1983.
Just as the dumb person in the room, does Florida customarily get tornadoes at all? No, I'm assuming.
Not particularly. I mean,
Okay.
they do happen more
But
towards the northern.
But it's very irregular.
Yes,
So
yes.
for-
They get tons of thunderstorms. It's the lightning capital.
Sure.
But generally, they're thunderstorms that just pop up, rain, lightning, and then fall apart.
So this was anomaly on top of anomaly on top of anomaly.
Absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, it had everything, which
Right.
is very uncommon. If you've heard of thunder snow, this was one of those examples of that happening.
What is thunder
Excuse
snow?
me? You said that as though anybody would.
I'm sure
Thunder
some
snow-
listeners are familiar. I've actually heard the term, but I have no idea what it
Is
really
this
means.
snow that can electrocute you?
Essentially, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What happens?
Thunder snow is a Pokemon attack. So
I mean, an electric ice type Pokemon would be pretty
That
dope.
would-
Oh, wait,
be-
this is a Pokemon thing?
I can't think of a Pokemon that is electric and ice type now that I think about it. And we're 7 generations in. That's pretty impressive.
We'll have to
It's
get
not
an
a
expert
Pokemon
on
move.
that.
Oh,
No.
I don't know, nerds.
Okay, so, thunderstorms, you get the lightning from the upward dynamic. From that upward force, it creates this essentially a static charge. It's the motion, the particles rubbing against each other. I'm not going to get into that too far because I
Appreciate
can't.
you. Yeah.
I don't.
And I will not
But
understand.
essentially, this friction is created with this strong upward force, and that's what really differentiates the charges and causes the lightning to strike. Normally, with a snowstorm, you don't have that strong of an updraft to create that charge. And so it is very unusual to have a snowstorm that produces lightning. I have seen it once, and it was actually the first time in my adult life I was out shoveling snow, and I heard it, and I did not believe it. And then it happened again, and I ran to the door, and I said, honey, there's thunder snow. And she was like, I don't know what that is. If you have a minute, there's a supercut on YouTube of Jim Cantori. You may know him as a famous weatherman. He's on the Weather Channel.
Oh, gotcha.
Of him experiencing thunder snow. So it's him live on the air several times because he's been doing it forever. Of him just talking, and then lightning strikes, and he nerds out every single time.
Aww.
And it's fantastic.
He's just like getting his whole life.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna get real vulnerable with you. Can I ask you a question that potentially could be answered by a 5-year-old if they know enough about science?
I just a couple months ago went to go talk to kindergartners about weather, and it was way harder than I thought it would be.
Okay, well, get ready to struggle
So-
because that's probably where my learning base is on anything.
One of them told me clouds were made by Jesus.
Can't
and
disprove it. Okay, my question is,
That's pretty much what I said.
okay, is lightning? You said it's like basically made from static, that sort of friction. So would that mean that like lightning is like a crazy ass version of like just regular static electricity? Like when I when I
pretty
touch
much.
somebody, am I technically like Zeusing them?
Yeah,
That
it
rules.
is.
You're
It
mini
is
Zeusing them.
not that far off as far as the basic concept of it. Yeah.
So
it's-
in the little ones you see, like when you on the like if you have it on a blanket, or if you eat one of those like wintergreen thingies, you're just seeing like a tiny little lightning bolt.
I don't know about the wintergreen things. I'm not
Okay.
sure what exact dynamic is in play there. I don't think we have so much of a charge
Nobody
in
in
our
science
cannons.
knows.
It's a mystery to
No.
everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is the same thing. So you get that unbalanced charge when you rub your socks on the carpet, you touch something, and it evens out that charge. It's
You
the same
smite them.
thing. So the cloud builds up this unbalanced charge.
Reed is so excited in this moment. Their arms are up, sort of in a like dainty Buddha position a little bit.
It's the weak wrist game hand position, honey.
Oh, well, that's that name. If you need that as a better reference
I just
point.
love that you didn't immediately assume what that is, and that is progress, ladies and gentlemen.
But they just were, hands out to either side, delighted as if they were going to be casting a lightning spell.
I was throwing little invisible ones at Michael every time I said lightning bolt.
Yes. I just wanted
what it
to
is?
properly cast that picture
for you. It's
for
like if a T-Rex drops a glass
Oh, yes.
and is like, oh no, and pulls their arms back.
That's
what Reed was-
basically how my arms are in neutral position. I'm a T-Rex who doesn't want to step on glass.
I think we all are deep down.
Thank you.
Shifting into sorting, because I feel like we've examined, at least on the surface level, what this Storm of 93 was really about. I have a pretty good sense as to what where we should be sorting it. Do the two of you also?
What are your thoughts, man?
I'm thinking that it's a Gryffindor. I'm thinking that as far as like catastrophic natural collisions go, this is some brash nonsense that is being thrown out there.
I can definitely see that angle. I think I'm a little biased from the forecasting standpoint
sure,
of it.
absolutely.
No, please
where
tell
I
us.
see the great advancement in how we communicate weather to people and what it did.
You're taking into account also the
Not just the
human
phenomenon,
side of the
the
story.
whole
right,
story, honey.
because
Yeah.
aren't we a part of the world too?
Thank you.
You know?
I'm always telling him we're part of the world, and he refuses to believe me.
You're really attacking me a lot tonight.
But
like,
with utter nonsense every
no,
time.
it's true, but it's increasingly disarming because I'm like, oh, Reed's done now.
So you're calling me out for having to argue that I exist, and you don't even believe we're in the world.
That's
So
fair.
He's
That's fair.
straight up a Nietzsche all the time. I don't know if I said that guy's name right. Is he still alive? Will he get mad at me?
No.
I have some terrible news.
Oh no.
Nietzsche, much like God, is dead. Let's move on. Oh no, you were going to say Ravenclaw.
I would push it toward Ravenclaw just because of the breakthroughs in forecasting that were.
We don't necessarily need to land either way. Reed, do you have a breaking point for us?
No, I think either of those are. It's either like a super smart Gryffindor, or it's a very, very ambitious, brave, famous Ravenclaws. But I probably would lean towards Ravenclaw myself.
Sure, that's totally fair. Let's go with a slightly more current event, Hurricane Katrina.
Yes, so Hurricane Katrina, $125 billion in damages, so a little bit worse than the $2 billion in 1993.
Yeah.
Especially
I think-
because it was so concentrated.
Absolutely, and one that needs much less description. I think you will be hard pressed to find any adult who doesn't know what
remember.
Katrina was. There were,
Who's she?
when I was in Mississippi, there were individuals who would not say the name, and they
So it's
would
like
say,
Voldemort status.
"Oh yeah," they would just, except instead of "he who must not be named," they would just say "that bitch."
No way!
Yeah.
Like a drag queen. That's amazing.
So, yeah, they would say, well, there used to be a house here, but then that bitch came through and it's gone now.
Like a misogynist talking about his ex-wife. She took everything. That's amazing. Yeah. And this one was also this is one of the deadliest ones that ever happened too, right? And am I wrong that some of that was really preventable?
You could say so. It's one of those things where hindsight is 20/20. But there were a lot of failures of man that caused additional loss of life.
The levees were the big,
right.
ooh, we really should have been checking on those and making sure, because it was the levees broke, and then everything got real sunk.
Yeah.
Well,
on top of that, too, there may have been, and this is debatable, you can find arguments on either side about what really happened.
Yeah.
There may have been some unjust influence in the forecasting of the storm.
Oh, what do you mean?
So when you have a hurricane moving forward, we can't forecast that perfectly. We do have the computer models, and one will say, oh, it's going to go this far north, and another will say it'll go this far south.
But a hurricane is essentially made of insanity. So
right,
it's, so like, it's
focused,
hard to
focused insanity.
Yeah.
And so if you've seen, they call them the spaghetti charts. So you'll have one line going this way, one line going that way, and there are all these different directions. And then we have what we call the cone of uncertainty. So when you see that map, that'll say, oh, in 2 days it'll be here. In 3 days, it'll be here, and it gets wider, and you have that wide range. When that was being done, some will say, I wasn't there. There is some argument that there were officials that pushed for that cone to be shifted slightly. So it was still within the area that the models were saying, but they didn't want to cause unjust panic. And so they said, well, why don't we just tone it down a little bit and say it's going to kind of go more in this direction?
I would always lean in favor of being pro-panic and rather be just like, hey, everybody, get the hell out. And then like, oh, we were wrong, you left for no reason, as opposed to stay where you are and then you're ripped apart by a hurricane.
And I think that's generally the opinion of the meteorologists, the National Hurricane Center or NOAA or whoever is working on that now. I don't remember anymore. So
out of the game too long.
The problem is we're dealing with people. And if you know old people in their houses that are being told that maybe a storm is coming, a lot of them are going to say, you said that last time and nothing happened. I'm going to stay here this time. Oh. So they were really worried about the false alarms and crying wolf and then people not reacting when an actual event was going to occur. And also it costs money to evacuate. Not that I want to say that they had their hands in those pockets, but maybe they had some concerns about the costs of evacuating in case the storm didn't do what it did.
I suppose the damage would remain the same regardless of whether or not evacuated. But as far as like mortuary costs are concerned, that's, I mean, now you're choosing to not scare some people at the cost of more human lives. And that to me runs wildly irresponsibly.
It's always a measured judgment. You have to decide whether to warn or not. If you're going to false alarm too much, then your alarms don't have any more credibility.
That's
fair.
I
can understand from that perspective. But you want to make sure that you're making that decision based on the science of it and not because of any fiscal policy.
Right. So then just to give us like the briefest of the science behind a hurricane, what makes a hurricane?
To make it as simple as possible, hot water.
Okay.
So you need warm water at the surface. You need a good depth of warm water. So it can't just be the top is hot. It's got to be depth, because once that top water evaporates, there needs to be more to keep warm evaporating, water, keep building. You also need fairly stable air. So if you have one of the jet streams, so that's an upper level wind, very strong wind, at least 50 knots, 65 miles per hour, could be hundreds, could be several hundred miles per hour, high winds up in the upper areas. So if you have that, as that storm tries to build, it just gets ripped apart. So you need to kind of have that calm wind. You need to have that warm water. You need to have sort of an organized wind to keep it together and push it along. I mean, some will sit in a spot for a long time. If you watch during the summer, you'll see a storm out in the Atlantic that just wobbles around for over a week without actually going anywhere.
One of many things about the ocean that besides everything else, the ocean is the most scary thing on the planet. I just crossed my arms like anybody can see it.
That's it.
It was. You might have heard the very soft harumph that
the foot went down.
I don't know. I got indignant about it too.
I was going to say something scarier, but I cannot now.
So,
jellyfish.
So, Tom, then in this particular case, Hurricane Katrina formed out in the Gulf,
in the Bahamas, right?
In the Bahamas.
It was still in the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
And it became tropical storm status. It didn't even it didn't even become a hurricane until right before it made landfall with Florida.
Oh, okay.
So it made landfall with Florida, and it increased to a Category 3. And then it weakened as it went over land, as hurricanes do.
How far up in terms of categories do they go? Sorry.
5.
5. Okay, 5 being the most dangerous.
So I do have notes here on the hurricane categories. So Category 3 is sustained winds between 111 and 129 miles per hour at their strongest.
And Category 5 is just called Rock You Like a. That's a joke that I should not have told. It should not have come out of my mouth. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I want to forgive you, but I'm finding it hard.
You're also going to use that later when you're explaining hurricanes to people.
I'm going to need time.
I'm so sorry to you and the listeners and in general.
So it weakened as it went over Florida.
Oh, okay.
And then it got into the Gulf, and that's when things went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it hit this area of warm water, basically untapped warm water in the Gulf, perfect wind conditions, and it increased from Category 3 to Category 5 in 9 hours.
Whoa.
So the sustained winds got over 156 miles per hour. I think they got well over that. It was a major hurricane status.
And at that point, was that when it was actually announced, like, hey, this is the real deal. You guys should get out of here?
Nope.
Oh.
The track was still uncertain at that point. So what happened in that transition from Category 3 to Category 5 is kind of a complex process with all the fluid dynamics going on. But it weakened going over land, and it underwent what's basically called eye wall reconstruction. So you know the eye of the hurricane, there's that eye wall, that wall of clouds around the center.
Mm-hmm.
What happens sometimes is this secondary wall begins to form outside of that. When that begins happening, the winds get a little more disorganized and the storm gets wider. So the winds slow down, the storm grows, and that wall forms. And then once that wall finishes forming, it basically sucks the moisture from the former eye wall, pulls it out, and then the storm re-intensifies larger than it was before.
So the eye of the hurricane becomes bigger, but also the width of the hurricane expands.
Not necessarily every time, but pretty much.
Okay.
And then it tightens back up, too, in the
Oh,
center.
okay.
But the outer reaches of it do remain larger. Once it's out there, it's out there.
So the basic thing is, it is just becoming a bigger hurricane. That is bad.
Right. And the track was still being forecast to go a little bit more to the west.
Mm-hmm.
And then the storm made that hard right turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still
Headed
within
north.
the forecast track. It turned north, and everybody knows what happened. It slammed the coast, record rainfall. It had decreased to, I want to say, Category 2 or 3 by the time it made landfall. But it also still had a storm surge of 27 feet. So that is essentially a 27-foot raise in the sea level,
right,
where it is making landfall.
So it caused a huge surge of water just chomping down on the earth.
Right. So that right front quadrant of the storm, and that's the area that went more so over Mississippi, pushed in that surge of essentially 27 feet of water. That went 6 miles inland.
Oh my God.
The casinos that were on barges got pushed in and knocked over. Like, it knocked over casinos.
Mm-hmm.
And areas where the land was a little bit lower, so your rivers, your basins, that storm surge may have gone up to 12 miles inside.
Wow.
So it was an incredible push of water. And then it continued to rain. And as they say, the levees broke.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bad situation that everything came together to make it terrible for everyone.
Yeah, because this is like the costliest in terms of damage of all the hurricanes we've ever had, right?
I believe Harvey may have been close.
Okay.
Harvey was more recent.
Do we know what the damages are as far as like Puerto Rico is concerned? Because I know that we're
still trying to figure out like how how expensive
once
that
we
is, right?
start fixing things there, we might have a better idea.
That's valid.
Which
that's
is
valid.
like, okay, did you guys know, like, we like to pretend like that these sort of things are completely like isolated and like from our own lives, but did you know that I think it's Puerto Rico is where we get like most of our IV bags? So we've actually been experiencing an IV bag shortage.
I believe that is correct.
A lot of medical
I think
supplies
it was that This American Life
manufactured
story
there.
ran on that.
It's terrifying.
Yeah,
how much people don't even
we
think
had
about
a whole run of hurricanes this past season that were particularly bad, and Maria was, I think, sort of the cherry on top of.
Yeah,
that.
They got hit multiple times back to back with incredibly strong storms, and I think if we learned anything from those storms, it's that we didn't learn enough from Katrina
Right.
as to how to respond, how to react, and how to recover.
Although in the case of being on an island, evacuation is much more tricky.
Right. And I'm not going to... We can point fingers in a lot of directions and talk about, who should have done what there. But the point is, after the storm happens, the damage is done. The next step is obvious.
Right.
Is it fair to say, because I'm looking, I did pull up the top 10 storms in terms of like damage.
Mm-hmm.
Only one of them is even from the 90s. The rest of them are from the aughts up. Is it fair to say that that this is also part of climate change? Because I know most people just think of climate change as global warming, where everything gets drier and hotter. But I have to imagine that like there has to be some sort of axis happening where we're going to be getting these larger storms, right?
I think it would be very difficult to argue against the fact that we are seeing storms occur that are more unusual at a greater frequency than we ever have before. And there's an analogy that I like to use for this, and it's baseball. So I know everybody loves sports. Barry Bonds, he used steroids.
Yes.
Everybody knows that.
Right.
Nobody is disputing it. He also hit hundreds upon hundreds of home runs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He and Mark McCon.
We know that.
What was it? Mark McGwire?
Mark McGwire.
There we go.
When they were having that home runoff thing,
Mhm.
I remember that.
Yep.
Even
Sammy
my
Sosa,
gay ass remembers
same
that.
thing. Yeah. So steroids definitely increased his ability to hit home runs.
Yes.
We would not dispute that.
Yeah.
He was much stronger, so he hit more home runs. We could not take any one home run and say, oh, he wouldn't have hit that one if not for steroids. He would have hit home runs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely hit more because he was on steroids. Our climate is essentially on steroids.
I see.
We can't point to any one storm and say, oh, this happened because of the climate change. But we see the storms happening with greater frequency. We see more unusual weather patterns. We have 100-year floods happening to explain that, it's this flood that you would expect to happen based on the climatology once every 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing those at a slightly higher frequency than we might expect.
Whoa.
And so I think it's pretty clear to say that, yes, there is a significant shift in the frequency of these events. But then again, 2 years ago, things are fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
We had a very quiet hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
There was almost nothing.
Yeah.
And then we had an extremely active one. So, but again, you can't blame any one individual event. We have to look at the large collection of data.
Yeah, so because that's all what the scientific method is about, baby. Like you can't get reliable data from one.
No, absolutely not.
One instance. You have to look over hopefully as much data as possible and multiple tests. And oh my gosh, I don't know. Climate change, I think, is like the thing that keeps me up at night the most. Just thinking about like, oh, even if my life goes well personally, Earth's dying.
Can I soft soapbox for just a moment on semantics around climate change? Because I personally feel that the change from global warming to climate change, from, political spheres being like, well, it's not really global warming if it also is cooling. And so then the scientific community was like, all right, it's climate change. And climate change sounds so goddamn soft because everything changes.
Are you saying that climate change is a politically correct term?
A little bit.
So and these cucks trying to tell us how to have weather.
It's this PC culture that won't let us say global warming anymore.
When I was a kid, you could just let somebody die.
It what it actually is being purported to be, which is man-made environmental, like, weather pattern affectation, basically.
That's, like, very much ensure we self-destruct. Yeah.
I'm just so frustrated that we're not calling it exactly what it is, and we're softening it to it's climate change.
Could I soften it a little more by saying we are experiencing large-scale temperature increases at a rate that has never before been seen in the fluctuations of our climate in the planet's history in the modern... how would I phrase that? Since the world was lava.
Oh my God.
The thing that I want attached to all of that is, and humans are responsible. Like, because it's the argumentation, at least around whether or not people believe or don't believe in climate change, is whether or not humans are responsible for what is happening. And I feel when we just go like, well, it goes up and down, like, it actually makes it even more asinine when people are like, I don't believe that.
Sorry, I'm having trouble. You can disagree with science.
I'm having trouble even articulating my argument because this sort of dumb art. Like, what does it? How does it hurt you unless you're
This is the most angry I've ever seen Michael.
The corporate greed that you're trying to fucking drilling into the goddamn earth to kill things. It frustrates me to no end.
Yeah.
Like, just give to your environmental protection agencies. And the fact that just recently fucking Scott Pruitt was like, get rid of science from the EPA. Like that. I'm going to cool down.
Yeah, you take some deep breaths.
Because I'll warm up again. And that's a result of other humanity.
Mouth breathing, I understand. Now, while he decompresses, is there anything we need to know, anything else about Katrina before we start sorting?
Let's just start sorting.
Yeah, I think we pretty much we beat that into the ground.
Is it a Slytherin?
I think it's hard to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Great. Let's move on to this eruption in Iceland. It was 2010. And
this has a long ass, like, you sent us all the things and I was like, even when you say it, I'm not going to be able to say
Icelandic
back.
is a really tricky language.
So many S's and J's.
Because J's are pronounced like Y's, and L's are sometimes pronounced, double L's are sometimes pronounced like L's, and sometimes pronounced like T's. And then there are two letters in the Icelandic language which are a th sound, one of which is a soft th, and one of which is a hard.
You went to Iceland. What's this thing called?
I will attempt it. I have not had an excellent track record, but It was the eruption of the Icelandic volcano. Eyjafjallajökull.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if this is like insensitive, but that is the funniest sounding language I've ever heard. I love it so much.
Oh, the Icelandic language is great. If you want to listen to some Icelandic singing, Sigur Rós is great. They're a fantastic band. They've got like so many albums.
You know that they're a well-known band, right? That was like you saying, y'all, if you like English music, you need to check out Radiohead.
It's more that people might not realize that they're Icelandic.
I guess so.
That's more of what I'm going to. Like, if you're not really into that like sound, you wouldn't know who they are.
Right. Is Radiohead English?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I believe.
What happened? It was a volcano?
Yes, so the caveat on this, a volcano is not meteorological.
A volcano is not weather, folks.
Volcano is not weather, so if a volcano erupts, don't go picket Al Roker's house. He had nothing to do with it.
You didn't forecast this volcano.
I mean, you can protest Al Roker just because he's kind of obnoxious. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But if it has to do with volcanoes, the man is innocent.
Roker innocent.
But so this massive volcano goes off in 2010.
Absolutely. So the ash cloud is really what I want to talk about here. And the direction that cloud took.
Mm-hmm.
So airplanes, they cannot fly through volcanic ash. It's rocks.
Yeah.
It's dirt, it's mud. It would immediately disable an engine.
Right.
There's no, well, maybe we could. No.
Because essentially everything that is not water on the Earth is made from volcanoes. Because it's our tectonic plates that are splitting open, and the magma rises up out of the ocean or out of the floor and creates
yes, the floor,
the lava, which then cools and becomes basically every rock formation on the
floor
planet.
is lava.
Yes.
We've all known this for a very long time.
And if you step on it, you will die. And your little brother will laugh at you.
And nobody wants that.
No, certainly not.
So the major influence behind where this ash cloud went, it was pretty clear from the start where it's going to go, because in that area, well, in all areas, but in that area, there are two particular items in play, and these are what we call semi-permanent pressure systems.
Mm-hmm.
So when you watch the TV weather, they'll talk about, oh, we've got a high pressure here, we've got a low pressure here. And we have these pressure systems that are usually there. They move around, they may grow, they may shrink, they may not always be there, but because of the patterns of wind, because of the uneven heating of the earth, because of just the normal variables in play, we have these pressure systems that are usually there. The two in this case are the Icelandic low, which is a low pressure system usually just south of Iceland, and that has a cyclonic flow. So that's a counterclockwise flow. So on the bottom end of it, it is pushing, wind from the northwest.
Oh, gotcha.
Below that, we have the Bermuda Azores High, another semi-permanent pressure system.
That sounds like a strain of weed that would get you messed up.
Well, it messed up Europe.
Yeah.
Because high pressure has anticyclonic rotation. So it's clockwise. So it is also on its top end guiding the wind from the northwest.
I see.
So these two semi-permanent pressure systems in play, the predominant wind in that area is northwesterly. And what is northwest of continental Europe? A volcano.
Yes.
Called Eyjafjallajökull. I couldn't do it. Eyjafjallajökull.
You sound like how people talk in the Red Room on Twin Peaks. Like you're like if we play this backwards, Tom will be telling me who's gonna murder me.
So basically, these two pressure systems created a supercharged conveyor belt to just blast all this ash.
Yeah, and it's a conveyor belt that is usually there. Mm-hmm. There is the polar front jet that is often between those as well. So you have high winds in the upper levels. And yeah, so it basically guided this ash right over continental Europe. And it
grounded
down everything. And it shut down everything for quite some time because there is such a low tolerance for ash. You cannot fly in it. And when all was said and done, over 95,000 flights were canceled.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's equally crazy is in Iceland, they still have so many active volcanoes that there are photos when I was there, just as I did that. I did that only so Reed couldn't go after me.
How do you know somebody's been to Iceland?
How?
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
And they'll usually tell you by saying, "I went to her world." I'm sorry. Okay, now I am being offensive. I'm just pretending I'm speaking gibberish.
But
the Icelandic people have suffered enough.
Anyway, when I was there were photos. I went to oh goodness, I'm forgetting the name of the museum, but they have a man-made ice cave there. It's in Reykjavik. They've constructed an ice cave, and there's this wonderful set of photographs from when all these eruptions have been taking place. And there were just a handful of them with Icelandic folk who were pretty damn close to these eruptions, lava spewing up in the background, and they're just saying cheese to the camera.
I have to say, I have not seen enough eruption selfies.
I mean, I think if any, like the Icelandic people in general, like probably know their way around like what the appropriate distance is. If you're a tourist, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't walk into a volcano that's going off.
Yeah, don't, it's the land of the ice and snow. Don't
Getting warmer.
I mean, I make fun of you, but somebody's been like, damn, there's a volcano going off. I gotta go get a photo.
Yeah,
of
I mean
that.
that's where many Darwin Award winners, I'm sure,
Right.
reside.
And Werner Herzog.
Yeah, that's true.
He's
That
the only
documentary
man who could
was.
walk in there.
If you haven't seen the documentary that Werner Herzog did on volcanoes, it's incredible.
Oh, I thought that was a non sequitur of you just saying the only man who could withstand a volcano is Werner Herzog.
No. He I forget
he's
the name.
mad.
I forget the name of it. But
Is
it's,
it Into the Fire?
yes, I
Something
think
along those
so.
lines.
Well, I love
Yeah.
Herzog so much, and I love volcanoes, even though they
When
are
she is
probably
talking about the magma heart of the very mother that we all come from, we sometimes wonder, is her heart beating for us or herself?
And the thing is, we don't fucking know, and that's the most terrifying. I don't know whether, but I do know. I do know a little bit about like how the tectonic plates work, and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are terrifying because for the most part, we still know barely anything. Like volcanoes, a little bit because you can kind of like, oh shit, there's some rumbling happening. But with earthquakes, we actually still don't have a reliable way to predict them happening.
And even that prediction on the rumbling of volcanoes, that's not predicting.
Yeah, that's just like,
saying,
oh, this is happening.
Oh, this might already be happening.
Yeah, but like that, for the most part, you cannot predict. You cannot give people any warning when it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's some wild. Nature is wild. So then, with all this ash coming across all of Europe, was there any, outside of obviously just damage to the area? I mean, not major damage, but
It was essentially more economic damage in this case. With the grounding of flights, they had to shut down a lot of business, shut down events that were scheduled couldn't happen. The air quality was terrible. Not so much physical damage, but cleanup and
yeah.
How long did you say that took?
the eruption was ongoing for over a month.
Yeah, it was a substantial eruption.
'Cause I'm just
several
imagining,
months.
like if you were on vacation in Europe, were you just stuck there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, you could probably
yeah.
travel further east, and then you'd have to take weird plane routes.
Yeah, you could just go the other way around the world.
That I just know like on any
Carmen
vacation,
San Diego it.
any vacation I ever go on, by the day we're going home, I am ready.
I am sure there are a number of wild stories that resulted from being grounded for however many days, months, because of this volcano.
Tell us if you're listening. If your plane was brought down.
Well, or
sell
if
me
you
the rights
just
to your
know
story, and
some
we'll write
stories.
that movie.
Yeah, because that's the story that's gonna be told.
We got. We'll say Kevin James has to get home.
Oh, so you went like schlock comedy.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
thinking it would be like some sort of romantic
Kevin
piece.
James goes to Amsterdam to have a good time before he gets married.
Oh.
But it's a shotgun wedding too. All right. Let's
Of
raise the
course.
stakes a little bit.
Right.
But then this volcano goes off, everything gets shut down, and he has to find his way around the world the long way.
Coming this summer, Kevin James in Kiss My Ash. So
I was gonna go with High in the Sky based on the Amsterdam angle, but
I see.
Kiss My Ash is way better.
So where are we gonna sort this one? Because
It's tricky. I'm leaning Ravenclaw based on sort of the wonderful combinations of things, but I suppose it wasn't a wildly unique set of pressure system. Like that's just there.
Right, yeah. Everything is kind of in place where we would say beforehand, well, if this goes off, that's where it's going.
Right.
And then it did, and it did. So
Maybe it's a Hufflepuff?
and here's what I'm thinking, and you guys can tell me if this is dumb or not. it kind of reminds me of like a slapstick Buster Keaton like moment where the volcanoes happen. They're like, oh no, but then like all of the other bookcases start getting knocked over. But that just happened to all of Europe.
Right, and
all
like
of Europe was like, what are you doing?
Well, and it's also one of those things where the people in that situation, like they see the eruption going off and they're like, wow, that's some really bad stuff. And then like all of that really bad stuff comes and hits them. And they're like,
yeah.
oh, and now they just have egg on their face or ash all over their ground.
So just one moment, I would like to mention a type of cloud that you may not have heard of.
Oh,
that
really?
is related to volcanoes.
Hit us with it, Tom.
And that is the pyronimbus cloud.
Hell yes.
Pyro?
Have you ever seen pictures of a volcanic eruption with lightning in it?
Yes.
Lightning's getting into everything. What's going on?
So your
When I was at the
standard
Perlin Museum,
thunderstorm
I remember the name.
is a cumulonimbus. It's, it's a water cloud that makes lightning. Pyronimbus is a cloud of ash that ash creates that same upward motion, that friction, creates that lightning, and you have pyronimbus. You have a firestorm.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to name my next Dungeons & Dragons character Pyronimbus. He's going to be a wizard who can, like, shoot fire at people. All right.
Set those goals high.
Also,
I have a lot going on in my
don't think
life.
we have a fire and electric Pokemon now that I think about it.
No,
I'm
can't
getting
say
really, really frustrated with the Pokemon company.
You need to write them about all of these things that
If
have
you
happened.
guys are aware of which Pokemon are that, like, just tweet at me. Because I'll take that guy on my team, assuming that they don't look really doofy. Okay, so we've got our Hufflepuff, and let's close out with you. You had the 2011 Super Outbreak.
Which I don't know what this is, and I'm already scared. It sounds like I'm going to get sick.
Yeah, it sounded more like a disease thing, but it's not. It's meteorological in nature.
It was a disease of the sky. So, yeah, in 2011, it was an outbreak of tornadoes. It was the single largest measured outbreak in history. More recorded tornadoes in that time period than have ever happened from one storm before.
And this is all in North America, or
across North America. There was all the way from Texas, and there was one EF0 tornado over the border in Canada. So it spanned
F0
across.
being extreme or low.
EF0 is the weakest.
Gotcha.
So EF5 is your
EF0.
Yes.
I heard F0, which I was like, Nintendo created a racing franchise around tornadoes.
Yeah, we had the Blue Falcon up there, and we just kind of
I am
went
so
off on
like
it.
literally every nerdy reference that either of us have like swatted you've just like volleyed it right back at us. I'm so impressed by you, Tom.
Well, I used to be much more lonely.
At one point you wanted to fuck the earth. Now it's just me.
Wanted to.
Because like here in the Southwest, like we don't. I think I've heard of like one time like hearing of like, oh, there's a tornado happening out in Riverside or another part of San Bernardino.
It has happened. It's very rare. I think a couple years ago they had an EF0 down in Fallbrook. Fallbrook, for those of you not from California, is not important.
Ooh, shots fired, Fallbrook.
Sorry to all of our Fallbrook listeners.
No, Larry,
or
you're
as
great.
Fallbrookers, as they're known. So, more tornadoes than in any recorded history up until that point.
Right. Yep. 360 tornadoes over the course of 3 days.
That is far too many. That's like
Most of them were on one day. So April 27th, 2011 was most of the tornadoes.
so. Like, what happened? Like, what? Like, were we even like? Were you guys able to get ahead of this a little bit and be like, oh, we're gonna have an average of 100 a day?
It was definitely forecasted. It was clear that there was going to be a major severe weather outbreak. I don't think you never want to forecast for a record. That's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
To say this is going to be stronger than anything before. You generally want to err on the side of what usually happens.
Gotcha.
But it was, in the days leading up, very clear that there was an enhanced threat. So everything was lining up that this is going to be a very strong cold front, a very strong early season front. We've got a lot of warm, moist air, in the south, and we've got a lot of cold, dry air coming from the northwest, and the jet support is there. The dynamics are strong. It's just going to keep pushing, and it did for days on end. Again, most of those tornadoes happened in one day, and there were 4 EF5 tornadoes within those days, which normally most years we don't see an EF5.
Oh wow!
And we saw several within those days. There were 11 EF4, which is still incredibly strong. That's winds sustained between 166 and 200 miles per hour for EF4.
Is the scale like exponential? Like, is it like kind of like, or is it like at a steady increase?
It's just something they made up. So yeah, 0. I have the chart right here in front of me because I don't have it memorized anymore, and I'm not going to use knots because I'm not in that business anymore. So miles per hour, EF0 is 65 to 85. 1 is 86 to 110. 2 is 111 to 135. 3 is 136 to 165. 4, 166 to 200. And 5 is over 200.
Oh, I see.
I mean, just the 0 seems scary enough.
Oh yeah, an EF0 will wreck your house for sure. I mean, if you're in a mobile home, you don't want that. If you're in a mobile home and an EF5 comes along, that doesn't exist anymore. It's just total
You've just
destruction.
been splintered and you're gone.
Like,
yeah.
To that thing, you probably are a splinter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, everything's terrifying. I'll be okay.
Yeah, so there were 210 mile per hour winds recorded in multiple storms. There was 4.5 inch hail from many storms. So it was all around just a huge outbreak of tornadoes. Obviously, it was the largest one ever. Tornadoes all the way across the country. I believe it was Alabama got hit the hardest, but all of those states. So Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, all the way up to Canada. So there were tornadoes in Minnesota, Wisconsin, all the way across.
How do we think we would sort this one? Because this one is just like, we're just giving you volume.
Yeah,
you're getting a bang for your buck on this.
Yeah. So unlike the storm of '93, it wasn't a particularly unique event, so to speak, as far as what exactly it was. When you say, "Oh, it's a line of thunderstorms," okay, we get lines of thunderstorms all the time. Just the pure strength of it, the pure volume of what occurred was so much stronger. Everything came together just right to make those storms much stronger than and much earlier in the year than we would expect, which is another part. You get that heat surge in the late spring, and then you get one of those late spring cold fronts, and those are all the ingredients you need.
As far as sorting, I don't feel that it's a Ravenclaw, and I don't feel that it's a Hufflepuff. So it really just comes down to Gryffindor or Slytherin from the numbers angle.
Yeah, the fatality was the worst since on one of the days the fatalities broke the record that hadn't the last record breaker was in 1925.
Ooh, okay.
So, this was so I'd probably give the edge to Slytherin.
You think so?
I mean, in the Harry Potter world, who's gonna kill people the most and most effectively? Those. Is it the Death Eaters who were Voldemort's gang?
Yes.
I do know that you wanted to have a teach the children moment for one more thing before we go, right?
Yeah, so we can still sort this.
Sure.
It's sortable, and I think it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand. And I am not going to explain it perfectly because I can't say I understand it perfectly myself, but I can at least offer a little bit of clarification on this. So the last topic I have is El Niño. El Niño, most people know as a Chris Farley sketch from 1993, but is what El Niño is essentially a measure of the temperature of the water in the near equatorial area of the Pacific Ocean. So what we're talking about when we talk about El Niño, it's called the El Niño Southern Oscillation. And it's this area where there's anomalous warming and cooling of the water. when that water is warmer than usual, that is an El Nino state. When that water is cooler than usual, that is a La Niña state.
Okay, so that's why the two gender terms there.
Right. So yeah, when it gets warm, it's one. When it gets cold, it's the other. It's our meteorological gender fluid.
Okay.
And so it was named by Mexican sailors, ocean farmers, what have you. I don't know. But it was originally called El Niño de Navidad. So they basically called it Baby Jesus.
Oh.
Because that's what you name things. Is this water's warm, like Baby Jesus. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the logic was.
If you know the connection there, please write to us because I'd love to know it. And what do you think? Because you said you wanted to bring it up. What do you think people get wrong about these systems?
I think a lot of people remember a couple specific El Nino events.
Yeah.
Where the media was also not completely clear on what El Nino was. So there was a lot of rain, and someone said, well, El Nino is happening. And people went, oh, these El Nino storms.
Right.
And now every time it comes up, someone says, oh, it's El Nino.
Itself.
They're going to say, oh, yeah, we're going to get those El Nino rains again.
It's really just based on the temperature in the water. This is affecting other parts of the weather systems, how they're normally going and interacting in a slightly different way. Right.
And there are correlations with rain in some areas. So when we have an El Nino, a stronger El Nino, we might see more rain in Texas. We might see more rain in New Mexico. There is a very small correlation with increased rain in Southern California, but not that much.
I think I understand. This is like in terms of like misunderstandings, this is the Frankenstein's monster of weather phenomenon.
Yes.
El Nino's rain, not the rain itself is El Nino. So go be pedantic about that, guys, on the internet.
And I will.
And with we should sort. Yes.
Sure. Why not? Do we want to sort El Nino and La Niña together?
I think that's most fitting because
they're two halves of the same coin.
Yeah, I think, they're misunderstood.
Definitely.
So they've got sort of, so they're probably not a Gryffindor or a Ravenclaw, because I feel that those two are the most well understood houses.
Also, it's just kind of out there, minding its own business.
Sure.
It's just some water getting warmer or colder. It's not doing anything.
That's a Hufflepuff. Can I tell you guys one of the craziest, scariest things that happened to me when I was a kid?
Sure.
I remember I was in, I think, the first or second grade when the rains, not the El Nino itself, hit Arizona where I was living, and we had flash flooding happen really badly. And one time, one of the floods happened while I was walking home from school, because I live just close enough, but far away that it took a 15 or 20 minute walk. But this was the early 90s. Parents were still
you were walking home and you saw water splashing down towards you?
No.
Kind of like an Indiana Jones sort of deal, and you had to run from it.
A flash flood happened while I was walking, and it went from dry ground to, I'm a small person as an adult.
Right.
As a child, it was microscopic. So it ended up happening in less than the 15 to 20 minute walk. The water was up to almost my waist.
Oh.
And my mother had to send somebody who had a giant truck to come get me because she couldn't drive her own car to save her child from the storm. And that's why people don't let their children walk alone anymore, I imagine.
Because of flash floods.
They just get swept up in a flood. Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for coming on, Tom.
Well, thank you.
A thing is that you wouldn't know is Tom is actually probably one of my oldest friends. I think you're the only friend that I have still now that I met as a teenager.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It was way back then, probably. Yes, then.
We don't want to say what year.
I can't. It's been long enough that I can't really remember exactly what happened.
I am so thoroughly glad that you came on, because this was a delight, and we love having these folks who are knowledgeable about science, because science is so dang cool.
Hell yeah.
If we want to be finding more from you about the interwebs, where might we look for it?
Basically, my sole presence is on Twitter, and that's @weakjoke. So that's weak as in not strong, and then joke as in joke.
Great.
There's no homonym there.
If you want to find more from us, you can find Michael Barryte at Belated Media. You can find me at That Dang Dingus, or us at sorting _ pod.
Sorting hat _
One
pod.
day I'm going to learn it. Or honestly, I'm surprised I got my own name right.
Yeah. If you liked what you've heard so far, tell your friends about us or give us a review on iTunes. We appreciate that. If you didn't like this podcast, tell your enemies. That'll show them. So thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Toodaloo.